So, as you know, guys, I spoke about the new Netflix series, or what I like to call, I'm not going to call it by its name, I'm going to call it the Jewish Kardashians, because that's really basically what it is. Having seen parts of one episode and not being able to sit through it, not because it's a Hillel Hashem, but just because my brain cells were slowly withering away. On top of that, I expected way more from a person, no offense to anybody else, but a Jew from the former Soviet Union. I expected something way a little bit more intellectual than what I saw on the screen before me. Which only led me to conclude that this person, it's not that she's self-hating, it's not that she's this or that, it's just that she may not be just be terribly bright, but I digress. So, in response to the series, I posted about a response to a rabbi. His name is Avi Shafran. He is the head, or one of the heads, of what they call Aguda, the Agudat Israel of America. They're basically one of the main Orthodox, organizations. I think they're affiliated with OU. And he basically wrote a response to this Netflix series, and then one of the questions he asked was, how come nobody is making documentaries, movies, or articles about people who didn't grow up Orthodox, who became Orthodox? And then he actually, strangely enough, proceeded to answer his own question, and he almost presumptuously answered it for the people that he's talking about. He said, well, maybe it's because most people who come to, live Torah observant lives don't feel the need to speak about or have a lot of anger or frustration about their empty lives before they became, Baal Tshuva, and so they just don't feel the need to speak about them. So I would just like to say, and I'm going to kind of expound on what I wrote to him in response, that, it's really unfortunate that the rabbi feels this way. And ironically, I just spoke to some friend of mine, I guess you can call him a friend, acquaintance, who actually did basically the same thing. He's in trying to discredit the Torah. He basically said that 99% of Balei Tshuva come to Torah observance because they, found absolutely zero and any and all meaning in their previous lives, or they had some tragedy, or they had depression. So he basically said the same thing that this rabbi said, except this rabbi actually follows the Torah, this guy doesn't. Apart from that, the conversation was really hilarious. He also got into a discussion with this lady on my wall about what women can and can't do, as if he knows what they can and can't do according to halakha, how they can act, how they can behave, and all these other things, which really it was so hilarious. But it actually was to a point where I started saying that this guy is really Haredi. It's not that he's anti-Torah, it's not that he's ignorant, he just sounds like a person who's really, really, really Haredi. Or I don't know, maybe spend time around Hasidim, certain Hasidic groups. So, apart from that, it got me thinking as to why really Balei Tshuva don't tell their story, why we don't tell our story in public. Unfortunately, the main reason is that, and I hate to say this, and I say this, given the fact that some of these people are and still continue to be my teachers. The Kiruv, what you would call the Kiruv world, is dominated by one particular stream of Torah observant Judaism, and that stream basically the ideology and the view, contrary to what they will claim, but ultimately the ideology and the view, or at least what the view was that basically the world that we live in is sheker. And it is sheker. But not only is it sheker, and not only is it so decadent, and it is decadent, it's so sheker and it's so decadent to the point where we, as Torah observant Jews, should not interact and interface with it. One of those things includes taking whatever we had in our previous lives, whatever talents, whatever skills, whatever passions, and basically declaring them, whether you want to say it's bittul Torah, it's time you can be using to study Torah, or you want to say it's, what they call goyish activity, that which is not Jewish. Basically taking all that stuff and throwing it away. That's basically the idea. It's rarely is it overtly stated. There's a lot of things that are not overtly stated, with regards to dating, with regards to sexuality, things like shomenigia, modesty. Things are not really spoken about. They're implied. People make an example. They act or they live by example, and basically it's implied. It's understood that this is what you do, this is what you don't do, and so forth. Very, very rarely are things spoken about. Very rarely are things discussed or debated in with regard to these things. I can just speak for myself, guys. Like, as a Baal Tshuva, I basically had to, and especially somebody who came to all of this when I was 30 or 31, not 21, not after college. I basically had to navigate this whole thing, this whole process by myself. Essentially by myself. Because what do you tell a guy who was a DJ in clubs? What do you tell a guy who traveled the world and saw what he saw? What do you tell a guy who, in his dating life, dated however he wanted to date, whether it was serious relationships, whether it was just casual stuff? What do you tell a guy? Go become a monk? There's just a lot of things that are implied. Not only that, there's just these examples of people who have, so to speak, made it, as it were. And the examples are people who basically go and do what amounts to what I like to call joining the witness protection program. What does that mean? They take on a new name. In our case, we take on our Hebrew name. We move to a different city, usually one with people who are like us. They always say you need a community. And, so a lot of people lose contact with friends from previous lives. A lot of people lose contact with some members of the family. Sometimes that happens vice versa, right? And, to answer this rabbi, a lot of people, ironically though, people who join the Orthodox community never really feel fully accepted due to cultural reasons, right? And, in many ways, not every way, but in many ways, in certain facets of daily life, we feel like second-class citizens. And you want to argue with me, no, it's not true, Bali Tshuva stand where Tzaddik can't stand. Listen, or Tzaddik can't stand where Bali Tshuva stands, however you want to read that verse from the Gemara. But listen, I always say, well, the people who are making shidduchim may be thinking about that verse quite literally, because they might think I'm Baba Sali. They may think I'm such a tzaddik, in fact, that I don't care, what my wife looks like. But that's a different discussion, Listen, okay, Thank you very much for that compliment. You think I'm such a tzaddik that you don't care you don't think I care what my wife looks like? Okay. But so yeah, guys. I mean, it basically what happens is people go into or put themselves into self-imposed witness protection program. Part of that is not realizing that, you know, this is the Torah of life. Not realizing that we are here to be in the world and we're here to be a light unto the nations. And I always ask from day one, how can you be a light unto the nations? How is it possible to be a light unto the nations and make a Kiddush Hashem if you're stuck in your ghetto in Monsey and Passaic and Harnof, in wherever it is that you are? It is impossible. And you can say, well, now we have the internet, now we have this, things are opening up, this and that and the other. Ladies and gentlemen, ultimately, we have a show like this to where a woman who left that community portrays things the way she portrays them, and at the end of the day, the entire world knows so little of us that they think that what she's saying is the emes. So clearly, we're still in the witness protection damn program. That's where we still are, right? And I hate to say this, that part of this is our fault. You know, all these Orthodox women are coming out and you know, it's like a backlash to this woman and saying, well, here's my life, and my life is not like your life, and we live normal lives, and we are CEOs, and we are mothers, and we are this, and we are that. And all I have to say is, where the heck were you guys before this woman came along? It took a mental midget to go on Netflix to get you guys out of your, you know, what I call your mole holes. You know, in Russian we say krot, dirka, krota. You know, krot is a mole. It took for this, you know, obtuse woman, I'm sorry, you could say she built a business. No, she married a rich guy, and he made her CEO of his company that he built up, at the risk of sounding misogynist, guys. Okay, we know the story. We know the whole story. So, and now she's running around calling us all fundamentalists. Very nice, very nice. But listen, this is not about her, ladies and gentlemen. This is about us. You know, we have to realize, and Rav Kook wrote about this extensively. Other rabbis have written about it, but I probably the most vocal one, I would say vocal, but just the most glaring writings on the subject, on the fact that Judaism is not a religion. In fact, the word Yahadut doesn't actually mean anything in Hebrew. It doesn't actually mean anything as a concept. It's something that we picked up in the Galut, in the exile. Just like whatever I just mentioned, this witness protection program stuff is something we picked up primarily in Europe. It's an Ashkenazi thing, and I say this as an Ashkenazi person. We picked it up because we saw the threats. There were threats against us, physical, spiritual, and we wanted to lock ourselves in self-imposed ghettos. And then we came to America. More or less the same thing happened, and we did basically the same thing, especially after the Holocaust. But my friends, my message is to the Balei Tshuva. If you have things in your life, most of us did not come to Torah observance because of, you know, something traumatic, depression, or meaninglessness. We had great lives. We had meaning in our life, whatever that looked like, right? Whatever we thought was meaning at the time. We just have more meaning now, right? We have what to contribute. Not only do we have what to contribute, in my humble opinion, and I can only say this from personal experience, we are going to be the ones that are going to bring back the people who are, so to speak, off the derech, because we are the ones who can relate to them, even though we went in opposite directions. We left the world that they came to, so to speak, in some ways. Really, not really. I can only speak for myself. I lived in Crown Heights for 2.5 years, to give you guys an example, you know. And in Crown Heights, which shocked me, you know, you have Chabad, the group Chabad, let's say, which brings a lot of people to Torah observance There's warmth, there's this, there's that. There's a lot of people love Chabad, right? Everywhere you go around the world, there's Chabad and Coca-Cola. But I was shocked to see how many kids of Lubavitchers, people, whether it's people who grew up Lubavitch, whether it's people who were themselves Baalei Tshuva by the Rebbe, how many of these kids of these people are off the derech. And in speaking to them, I realized that, more than any rabbi can speak to them, more than any kiruv rabbi, anybody can speak to them, I can relate to them more, and vice versa. They can relate to me and I can relate to them. I can come to them and talk about, DJing and music and all these kind of things and all the stuff that they think is so, the bee's knees. I remember a guy, this one Hasidish guy, this is like, I did a seminar with our friend Yontov Glazer, the Possible You seminar, here's a plug. And I remember in the seminar I stood up and I spoke about how, I was a DJ in New York and I did some stand-up comedy. And this Hasidish kid came up to me, this kid from Meir Sharim, and he came up to me, he goes to me, sweet kid, just innocent. He goes to me, you have to teach me how to be a DJ. I want to be a DJ, I want to be an actor. I'm like, why? He's like, I don't know, I want to be famous. I want to be a DJ and an actor, I want to be famous. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of, I start talking to the guy, I'm like trying to get to the bottom of why he has this, desire, why he has this ratzon to be famous, to be a DJ, to be an actor. And in between telling him, no man, this is, trust me man, like you don't want to be in that world. Just, you don't want to be in the clubs, you don't want to be in Hollywood. Trust me man, it's granted I was never in Hollywood, but like spent some time around certain people, New York, whatever it is, and like I was trying to tell the guy, like, trust me man. And then I realized, like, from talking to him, the guy is like one of 12 kids. His father loves him, but and it was very common among those guys in the group, like these guys did not get enough attention from their fathers. Let's say we one of 12 kids, you have 5 brothers, 5 sisters. There's no way your father can give equal attention to everybody. You have that many kids. I mean, there's no way. It's nothing, not a knock on the father. So I'm talking to this guy, and he basically, I came to the conclusion, to, not at the risk of being pop psychologist, that the guy was, he wanted attention. He wanted to be in the world. He was in a ghetto. He lived in a ghetto of sorts. Because that's what we did. After the Holocaust, we tried to separate ourselves from the Goyim. We tried to replenish all of these millions of people who were lost. I say this on Tisha B'Av, very appropriate. And we imposed ourselves in ghettos. And this is what the Hasidic community did. But at the same time, my friends, he's talking to a guy like me, and I'm telling him that what's out there, even though I'm coming from to where I can quote unquote mekadesh, I can take the things that I had in my previous life and I can integrate them in a holy, in a positive way. And the world, we should not shut ourselves off from the world, but at the same time I can come and I can tell this guy, listen man, there are ways to do this. There are ways. If this guy wants to DJ, if this guy wants to do stand-up comedy, if this guy wants to even act, there's ways to do it. But he doesn't have to necessarily, go off the derech. He doesn't have to necessarily go into Hollywood and God knows what. There's a nuanced discussion to have about these things, just like there's a nuanced discussion to have with Baalei Tshuva. Because, again, we're the ones, in my opinion, we're the ones that are going to solve this whole thing. We're the ones that are going to solve it. So, first of all, we're the ones that are going to get unaffiliated Jews, interested in what the Torah actually is, which is not a religion. It's really life. It's Torat Chaim. It's really us. It's a civilization, that we're reviving, especially here on the land of Israel with our language and our culture. And we can bring those Jews into the fold, but we could also help the ones that are off the derech. The ones that have strayed because of said witness protection programming of the Orthodox community. For whatever reason, whether it was because of the Holocaust, you know, the Baalei Tshuva are doing it too. The Baalei Tshuva are basically going into the witness protection program created as a result of the Holocaust. They're going into that shell, they're being sucked into that shell by this, you know, group that basically dominates the Kiruv world, that was formed or that exists the way they exist today, you know, partially as a result of the Holocaust. You know, we just spoke about why there's this whole thing of like people just learning and not going to work. This started after the Holocaust. You know, the famous story of the Hazon Ish came to the Israeli government and he said, we want 400 guys learning, please pay for these 400 guys. And then 400 turned to about 1 million or 500,000, I don't know how many there are, of guys who are just like learners, you know. So, my friends, what I'm saying is, I guess ultimately, given that it's Tisha B'Av, what I'm saying is, and it actually speaks about a greater issue, I feel like we've taken on this Holocaust identity. I'm not saying we should forget the Holocaust. We just read Kinot today, it's Tisha B'Av. We should not forget the Holocaust. We should always remember, but to make it our identity to the point where the Orthodox community locks itself in ghettos, sucking the Baalei Tshuva in ghettos, to the point where they're not sharing their story, they're not sharing their backgrounds, they're not conveying that the Torah is life. You know, to the point where they start thinking that their previous lives are garbage and just, you know, that's it. To the point where, you know, we're alienating 80% of Jewry from the Torah, from ourselves. Not only that, you know, here we are, again, getting upset about this off the derech woman, or people who are off the derech. Listen, again, where were you guys before this woman had a Netflix series? I'm not saying you guys weren't doing anything, but where were you guys telling your story? Whether you grew up from or you were Baal Tshuva. Where were you guys before Julia Hart? That's what I'd like to know. You know where you guys were? You were in the witness protection program. So, my friends, sun's about to set. I think I've said my piece. My friends, going forward, let's get out of the witness protection program. Let's get out of it. The Torah is life. We're here on earth, in the world, in the physical world. We're here to bring spiritual, you know, merge the spiritual and the physical. But the only way to do that is to recognize the entirety of the physical world. Yes. And the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because if you read the Torah, it also has the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, just as my friend who tried to discredit the Torah pointed out all the ugly parts of it and whatever it is, but I said, okay, well, just because you think this is ugly or primitive doesn't mean it's not the MS, right? It's a different conversation. But yeah, my friends, let's end this whole ghettoification of the Jewish people. You know, because the longer we stay in it, the longer the light is hidden. You know, we're meant to be a light unto the nations, and the longer we keep ourselves away from the world, you know, the darker and darker the world's going to get. And you guys see what's in front of you. I don't have to tell you. So, that's it, guys. It's time. Fat Tony is not out to get us. Let's leave the witness protection program. Alright, guys. If you're still fasting in the States, Tzom Kal. And talk to you soon.